welcome back to the Everything Goes Podcast with your host, TAK. A weekly podcast with the latest sports news, the hottest of the hot takes, and the best predictions you can get. Now, Chris, Ace, take it away.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Everything Goes Podcast with TAK, but Ace is missing today. But we do have a lovely guest with us, over 30 plus years of umpiring in MLB. Dale Scott. Dale, thank you so much for joining us. First umpire, like my dad said before we got on here. We're stoked. I mean, we love having people come on that we can really just kind of pick from and understand a different side of the game that many people don't see in your position.
Get to have one of the bad guys on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Hey, you know, one time our umpire union was trying to get a shoe deal with Nike, and a representative from Nike said, "Why would we promote the bad guys?"
Yeah.
Golly.
But the first thing I have to ask you, this has nothing to do with baseball at all. How do you feel about Oregon, the Ducks coming to the Big Ten?
I have mixed feelings because I love the Pac-12. I grew up in the Pac-12. You have rivalries and regional stuff. I mean, I would have preferred to keep the Pac-12 and strengthen. But that being said, I am excited. I mean, we have Ohio State coming to Austin Stadium this year. They were supposed to be there in 2020, and of course, COVID shut that down. In fact, I went to Ohio State when Oregon played there the next year, and Oregon won. One of the greatest trips I ever was on.
Oh yeah.
I have already booked my flight and everything. I'm going to Michigan November 2nd.
Oh, you're talking to two Michigan fans right here, man. Yeah. So it was a great year for us.
Yeah, we already know.
I've driven by the Big House once when I was in Ann Arbor for something, but I've never been there, and I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to go to Wisconsin also this year, but it's on the 16th of November, and that's my husband's birthday. So that got
that'd be a great gift. That would be a great gift for him.
It'd be a great gift. We're still trying to get out to the Big House.
We're big Michigan fans. We already know where we stand. We got our title. We know we're done. You know, we had 29 seniors. We lost our quarterback, our best receiver, and our best running back, and our head coach. So we know where we stand.
We might still
have
though.
5 losses next year.
Well, but you have titles. Oregon's been in the finals twice and lost, one on a last play of the game field goal, and then we got blown out by Ohio State. So we're still trying to get that while Uncle Phil's alive, and we'll see. Hopefully, we can do that.
Hey, Oregon has to have the best uniforms in college football, though, by far.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, it's the University of Nike Eugene. I mean, they have really since the late '90s has. I remember back when they were, starting to throw out some really wild uniforms and changing every game and all that stuff. And I remember, somebody was saying, well, I like the old traditional stuff, this and that and this and that. And I said, well, yeah, but they're not recruiting you.
Yeah.
They're recruiting people much younger than you, and they love it. And so look how other universities and stuff have copied them now with umpire change or uniform changes and that kind of stuff. So, but they've been on the cutting edge on that, and I'll admit a couple times those uniforms were a little wild, but they've had some really good ones too. It's fun.
Yeah.
Oregon, I've had season tickets since 1989. I've been going since. I was, 9 or 8, something like that.
It's a pretty field.
Growing up in Eugene, and they were terrible. I mean, they were for decades. They were terrible, but it was such an event and so much fun. And so I really do enjoy it.
Well, really quick, and I don't mean to get sidetracked into this, but what do you think of the transfer portal, and what do you think of the NIL?
Well, the transfer portal, yes, good and bad. I mean, it's tough. I can't imagine a coach nowadays, and I think Luke, Saban said, "I'm over this." But you're a free agent every year, and it's really, I mean, yes, you gain from the portal, but it also taketh away, right? And so that's just kind of a crapshoot, and you've got to have a very, and luckily Dan Lanning and the Oregon staff, they love recruiting. He's very good at it. He understands the technology and the stuff that's going on. But it's I think I've got pro and con thoughts on it because it's just so different. Now, as far as NIL, that's Oregon sits pretty. I mean, we have Nike money basically, and and we have a good donor base, and they have a pretty healthy NIL, so that's obviously good. But you really are starting, and you'll see it more, separating the haves and the have-nots. And I honestly believe what Chip Kelly said, I don't know, a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever it was, that, why are you having all these other sports doing this, flying across country and this and that for a volleyball or whatever? Football's different. Football's just one game a week, and it's a whole different animal. And I really think that there's gonna be a couple of things. One, I really think that eventually, as we get new media, the new media cycle in the late 2029, 2030, something like that, you are going to see basically two super conferences. You're going to see the Big Ten and the SEC, and then the others. And I also think that after a few years of doing this, for these West Coast teams, I also think they're going to separate those Olympic sports and that type of stuff, because it's just. Can you imagine flying from Eugene to go to Rutgers to play a volleyball game, and then I mean, it's just I just don't see it. I don't see it happening for a long time for some of those sports.
Yeah, the thing that just blows me away is there's probably like 20 quarterbacks in college making more money than the quarterback that was just in the NFL Super Bowl.
I know.
It just blows me away.
Well, and you hear the stories now is a coach will contact a player, and the first question is the first question is, how much are you going to pay me?
Yep.
Or they'll say, I want a Learjet and a car, and
golly. Golly. Well, Dale,
being an baseball.
Yeah, being an umpire, man. I mean, especially trying to get into the pros. How does that start? I mean, did you play baseball growing up? Do you have to start Division I college? Was there just an opening for you to get in? Like, how does that start?
I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and I loved baseball from a very young age. My grandfather, my mom's dad, lived in LA, and he was a Dodger fan. So obviously I was a Dodger fan, and there was no Seattle, then at that time. But I just pretty much knew that I was going to be the first baseman for the Dodgers. I was pretty much, that was going to be it. Right.
Yeah.
And then I started playing baseball. And that was obvious that, I was horrible. So,
oh my God,
I did play, I think from, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. But when I got into high school, there was only two teams, varsity and JV.
Yeah.
And I was several levels below that. So
wow.
I was 15 and I wanted to stay involved in baseball, but at 15, what are you going to do if you're not playing? I'm too young to coach. Not that I would be a good coach anyway. But a friend of mine said, "Hey, what about umpiring?" He was a year older than me, and he said, "I did it last summer. You make some money, and you're still involved."
Nowadays,
and watching umpires so much when I was on the bench, which I did a lot, I thought that could be, that sounded interesting. So I started umpiring when I was 15. And I loved it. I just it's not for everybody.
It's tough,
but just like playing isn't for everybody like me, but it was really a lot of fun. The challenge every single day, because guys, the baseball rules are what they are. You have, every time you walk out on that field, you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea as an umpire what's going to happen. It could be a 22-21 extra inning game. It could be a perfect game. It could be a guy hits 4 home runs, whatever. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen, but you do have to deal with whatever happens on the field. And that's such a challenge because, you get a lot of routine games and things just roll. And then you get the ones that aren't, the 2015 playoff game I had in Toronto with the bat flip and Batista and the Rangers.
Oh, no.
I was behind the plate for that. And that was, I don't know, an hour and 10 minutes, 7th inning. I mean, there was more things that happened in that 7th inning than, I had things that I'd never seen before. I mean,
that's an amazing experience right there in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I'd never seen a catcher get lazy, throw the ball to the pitcher and hit the hitter's bat and a run scores. I mean, how often does that? I mean, how many times has Russell Martin thrown a ball to the pitcher? That's a few zillion times. And you never know what's going to happen. But as an umpire, you have to deal with whatever happens. And sometimes you can be, totally prepared and the rules and you know everything, but S happens, and it's stuff that's maybe not what you expected, but the challenge of it is to deal with that and do the best you can in working with that, and of course, obviously the daily challenge of umpiring is getting pitches and plays right. So, it was a lot of fun. In fact, I started refereeing basketball and then football. you know, a couple of years after starting baseball, so I was officiating year round, high school stuff, and then I went to umpire school when I was 21, and that's when I got started in my career.
Is that a long process? Umpire school?
Well, it's changed a little bit now. Just in the last couple of years, the model has changed. When I went, it was 5 weeks. It started right after the new year, right at the new year, and they're pretty intense weeks. They were 6 days a week. They were 8 to 10, maybe 12 hours a day, depending. You woke up, you had classroom session with rules, you know, and then you went out on the fields and the batting cages, calling pitches and setting up plays and that kind of stuff. And it was kind of like a boot camp in a way. Yeah. But you know, then the top at that time, there was a couple umpire schools that were running at the top 25 from each school. So the top 50 went to a 1 week advanced school, and then from there, depending on how many openings in the minor leagues, they sent you out, you know, to various leagues. I went to the advanced school, and that's a big speed bump to get over, because if you don't go to the advanced school, you may still, you know, they may still hire you down the road, but when you went to the 1 week advanced school, you had a much better shot of getting, nothing guaranteed, but a much better shot. So that worked out for me. They've changed the model a little bit now. Major League Baseball has taken over all the minor leagues. And now they have umpire camps throughout the country where they identify prospects and have them come to I believe it's a 4-week camp now that I think just ended, or again, it's in January/February, and in Vero Beach, and then you know, you're put into the system depending on how many openings. So it's tough.
When you're in the minors, Dale, is it like being a pilot? Like you have to do so many hours down there before you become a captain? Like, do you have to do so many hours in the minors or so many seasons in the minors before you get called up to the pros?
No, but you have to work every level. In other words, you know, a player could have a great single A, you know, boom, go to triple A, or go to the big leagues, or double A, boom, to the big leagues. An umpire has to work every level of baseball. Wow. But there's no. I was lucky. I mean, I went through the minor league system in 5 years. That is pretty quick.
Yeah. Wow.
There's some guys that spent 10, 12, 14 years in the minor leagues before they got a shot in the big leagues. So, you know, that varies and that kind of stuff. And then, you know, nowadays you have call-up umpires. So you have AAA umpires that get a lot of big league, and they work big league spring training, and they'll fill in for guys that are hurt or sick, or at a wedding or a graduation or whatever. Okay. And so their call-ups are going up and down, and some of these guys will work throughout, you know, several seasons, 200 or 300 games before they get a job, or still not get a job. There was one guy a few years ago worked damn near 800 games over several years. He never got a job. I worked one game in the big leagues before I got a job. So it was a different system then, but that's pretty much unheard of. I just was at the right place at the right time. And like I said, the system was a little bit different, but I was very fortunate. There's, I think now when I came up, it was American League, National League with it, you know, now it's just Major League. I was an American League umpire. There were 32 guys on staff. And now they've expanded the staff because we have replay and those kinds of stuff. I think there's 78 umpires total, full staff. Yeah. And then another 15 or 20 call-ups, something like that. So, you know, it's less than U.S. senators. I mean, it's tough to crack that barrier, but once you get in, you're pretty much there.
But was the grind in the minors just as bad as it was for the players back in the day, where you had to like basically pay for your own way, find housing?
I would respectfully say it was worse. The players play half their games at home. It may not be their regular home, but they're home. You know, they're in one place where we're moving every series. And for obvious reasons, you don't want to see the same team all the time, and they certainly don't want to see us. Yeah. You know, the things have improved again since I was there. Now they have a union in the minor leagues. They have the working conditions are much better. They have their own hotel rooms. We used to until I got to AAA. You know, you would partner up with you know, your partner as far as sharing a room. I mean, you lived with your partner. I mean, you're driving to places, you're working on the field, and you're rooming together for, you know, 5 months. You know, it's like you're married almost, and so it's very important that you have a that you get along, because that could make for a long year if you don't. But things have improved and gotten better since I went through the system. But you know what? I was 21, 22. It was an adventure, man. I look back now and think of some of those trips that we took. You drive 10 hours after a game to work another game that night. God knows where. I mean, you got maybe 5 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep, if that, and you're grabbing a burger on the way to the ballpark because you got to go work another game. I mean, but when I look back on some of that stuff, I go, oh my God, but when you're doing it, I mean, I'm young. It's an adventure. I'm on this path that hopefully will get me to the big leagues. It was, it was a lot of fun.
Well, so as far as, MLB and umpiring, because one of my favorite parts of the game to watch is when the umpires get to eject somebody and you get like a face-to-face altercation. You're yelling, like, we're a big Yankees fans. So I used to love when you see Joe Girardi's veins start bulging. You knew he was fired up.
Yeah.
For you, what's a trigger? Like what's a boundary an umpire typically has where it's like, all right, if he goes past this line, he's gone.
Well, first of all, arguments have changed. We have replay now. So you have a whole different kind of dynamic on the field. And now you see most of your ejections now are on pitches and check swings, things that aren't, that aren't replayed, basically. But, we didn't have that, or certainly didn't have it the bulk of my career. I mean, I was the last umpire to eject Billy Martin.
That had to be crazy.
That was my third year, and it was like just a media whirlwind for a few days because of all the things, but as far as, they know what they can say and not say and do and not do, basically. Anytime they personalize an argument, for example, you have a call at second base. Of course, now we have a replay. It doesn't matter, but you have a call at second base and I call the guy out and here comes the manager. Now he can say, that's the worst blankety blank, blah, blah, blah. He could cuss all he wants. But as long as he's not personalizing it, and as long as it's not about me. Now, if he says you're a blankety blankety blank, boom, you're gone. You just personalized it. And then of course the obvious ones, you can't make physical contact. You can't spit on me. Which has happened.
Yes, it has.
You can't draw a line like a hitter. I remember one time I called strike three and he drew a line. I said, "Oh, you want to be an artist? Why don't you just go ahead and go and go be an artist?" Right?
Yeah.
I had one guy once that called him out on strikes. He went back to the dugout. He went down the tunnel, watched the replay, came back out and started screaming at me. I said, "Oh, you want to watch TV? Oh, I'll give you that chance. Why don't you just go watch TV?" Those are things that are called showing you up. We don't want to show up ball players, and they certainly don't want to show you up. And showing you up can also be like turning your hat around when you're arguing. Okay, you're gonna get ejected for that. I mean, that's just and then sometimes you'll just have a guy that just doesn't say the magic words, doesn't do anything, but he just won't. It's just like enough.
It's like enough.
This. Agree or disagree, we're going to play now. So either you leave or I eject you. It's up to you. As an umpire, you want to put the ball in their court. Let them eject themselves, basically. Yeah. And you don't want to look like the aggressor, because trust me, if you do, then the whole thing's your fault.
What is the official strike zone in baseball? I was always taught chest and knees. What do you guys follow?
Well, it was redefined in the early 2000s. It used to be, shoulders and knees, and that's ridiculous. I mean, that was, although we'd love it if you'll swing at that. But they redefined it where it's the midpoint from the waistline to the shoulders. So, the midpoint, and then the hollow of the knee, and the hollow is basically the lower part. Now you got to remember the strike zone is the zone when the hitter is about to attempt to swing at the pitch. So in other words, you may have a guy that's real low or something, but when the pitch comes in, he's going to come up, right? That's his strike zone, not where he started.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
So excuse me. So a strike zone can literally change each pitch, because if a guy squares to bunt, that's a different strike zone. Yeah, because his dimensions are going to be different than if he's swinging away. And then
now you're seeing guys.
There's it's got to be on the plate. The ball's got to be over the plate at some point.
You're seeing guys like Judge now that are like 6'8" that have a big midsection. So that's got to be a huge strike zone.
Right. I remember I had I think the guys, it was in the minor leagues, Nick Capra, I think his name. He got to AAA, and I had him in Oklahoma. I had him several leagues, but I had him in Oklahoma City in AAA. He was a fiery guy. He wasn't necessarily an umpire friend, but Nick was a short little dude. And there was a pitch that I called low, a ball, and the catcher goes, "Come on, man, that's a good pitch." And Nick goes, "I may be short, but I got knees." So it's like, well, okay, thanks, Nick. But yeah, it's Ricky Henderson used to be way down, or Pete Rose, but again, it's when he's attempting to address the pitch is when that's when you have your strike zone. So with the the computerized evaluations that started back in 2002 or 3, and that's when they rewrote and kind of tweaked the language of the strike zone. That's when we really, as umpires, got much more consistent to the zone that's in the book. For years, when I first started, for years until they changed that, we were way outside and we were way low. I mean, almost nothing above the waist was called a strike. And I watch games now that are on MLB Network during the winter or something, and I have the plate. I'll watch myself calling pitches that are way outside, and a lot of times no one said a word because that was how it was then. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. It's just that's where it had developed. And everybody knows that the guys like who was it, Maddox and those guys that just feasted on the outside, way outside, and because that was the way it was. That stopped. And that got much more. The zone got much more consistent starting in the early 2000s when they had that evaluation system. And now, I mean, there's little differences, and we can all nitpick, but I think the strike zone is much more consistent and much more to what is literally written in the rule book of what the zone is than it was when I started.
Yeah. Now, one more question about the strike zone. You see a lot of these catchers that are framing balls now. Where do umpires call it? Do they call it where he catches it or where it's crossing the plate?
No, it's not where he catches it. And I think framing is so overrated. There are good receivers. There are catchers that can just massage the pitch. This will date me, but when I first came up, Bob Boone was catching, right? Bob Boone made everything look like a strike. I swear to God. I mean, he had a great way of framing to me, and you'll see this, at the big league level, college level, you'll see it. They'll take a pitch that's outside, boom, and then go like this. I mean, you're telling me that you thought the pitch was outside, right? I mean, don't that to me is stupid. If you think you're fooling me, that's ridiculous. But a guy that's a good receiver will massage that where it's not a jerky motion. He'll just he makes every borderline pitch on the knees, on the outside corner, or whatever, look good. Now, some will say, well, if it's either a striker or it's not. Well, yeah, that's true. But I can guarantee you that there isn't a pitcher in the world that wants a catcher that does not receive the ball well, because that will take pitches away. As conversely, a catcher that does receive the ball well will help the pitcher. So there is a technique, but framing to me is overrated. Like, oh, you fooled the guy there. Well, maybe he missed the pitch, but it's very hard for me to think that when a guy catches here and goes like this, that, oh gosh, I guess that was a good pitch. I mean.
Now, Dale, oh man, what was I gonna say? Okay, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's all right.
Umpire in the age that you umpired, and then compare it to like now, you see, in AAA and AA, they're testing out the whole umpire having a piece in his ear, and they're it's like the whole electronic umpire.
ABS, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like it's a very split in a world nowadays.
I'm away from it. I don't want it.
People are like, take that out. Like, that is just, you're changing too much now with the game. Obviously, people that are open to. What are your thoughts? Someone who did umpire.
Well, it's called ABS. It's the automatic ball strike system. The ABS system was used in AAA the entire season last year, but they used it in two different forms. Like if you had a 4-game series in AAA last year, the first 2 games was all ABS. The umpire made no decisions. He just mimicked whatever the eye in the sky told him to say, strike, ball, whatever. The final 2 games of a 4-game series would be the umpire umpiring but they had challenges. The pitcher, catcher, or hitter could challenge a pitch. Now they only got 2 or 3 challenges a game, and you got to be. And the manager couldn't challenge. So the managers, I'm sure, set there like a pitcher will challenge the first 3 pitches if they're all 3 balls. I mean, let's be honest. They're gonna run out of their challenge. So what would happen is you let the umpires umpire. And then if there's a pitch that, hey, we want to, and a lot of people roll their eye. Oh my God, a challenge. We have video and this. A pitch challenge is really quick.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it. It's very quick.
They'll tell you almost immediately. Now, just like replay, the ABS system, whichever one they decide to go with, is going to change the game. There's going to be unintended circumstances.
Yeah.
Anytime you do this. For example, with replay now, you never, guys have a sure double. There's yet no throw really, but the throw comes in, he's already slid in. There's no real play. And the fielder would just, okay, he's in. Now they keep the glove on him. Why? Because he may come off the bag this much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a cheap out. That's not why replay is there. But if he's off the base with a live ball being tagged, he's out. And I remember a couple of times there was no play. I didn't even give a signal. And then we were about ready to go. And we want to challenge. It's like, challenge what? What are we challenging? So I'd go over there, and sure as heck, as he popped up, he just came out. So that's an unintended circumstance. That's a cheap out. It was never put in for those types of things. Example of ABS. If you have a pure or an ABS system where the umpire is calling pitches. Let's say there's runners at first and second, less than 2 outs, and the runners are running on the pitch, a 3-2 pitch, and the umpire calls ball 4. So, they advance, the catcher doesn't throw. Oh, we want to challenge that. Oh, strike 3. Okay. So now you have runners at second and third and an out.
Yeah.
Because the challenge, so the catcher never had a chance to throw.
Yep.
Try to throw a guy out, right? Again, that it's going to change the game in little ways that, some people are not, it doesn't bother them. Other people, it will bother them. The system, I think, first of all, I have trouble with either ABS system.
I feel like it takes the skill out of the umpires.
Well,
and the
human element out of it.
Well, okay, if you have a bases loaded, 1 out, and there's a ground ball to the shortstop. I mean, a made for double play right to him. Boom, boom. This is going to be easy. You're out of the inning, and it goes between his legs. You say, after further review, he usually makes that play, so we're going to give him a double play. I mean, of course not. Baseball is played by humans, and they want it umpired by robots, basically. Now you have the eye in the sky with tennis, and you have replay and everything. So I'm not saying get rid of replay, but on pitches, if you're going to do an ABS system, I am fully against the pure ABS system where you have an umpire because here's what happens, guys, that you have a plate umpire. Now remember, there's a lot more than just pitches that a plate umpire does. I mean, you have foul balls, hit batsman, catcher interference, batter interference. I mean, you have all kinds of, fair foul. So, it's not like you don't need somebody back there. Plus, who's going to brush off the plate? I'm just asking. All right? But
the catcher.
But yeah, but
that's a skill.
But if under a pure ABS system with the earpiece, the umpire goes down every pitch like he's calling the pitch, because first of all, it might be a foul ball. You don't want to get hit, all that stuff. But also, like I said, you have to observe what's going on. But then you're told what to call from upstairs. But if there happens to be, and I'm not saying it happens often, but if there happens to be a glitch on that particular pitch, they'll say, it's yours.
Imagine you're not looking.
And you're going, so you're going down every pitch for 8+ innings, never knowing if you're ever going to call one or not, but you have to have the focus and intensity that you are calling them. And there's, a winning run on base or something, all of a sudden they go, it's yours. Oh, yeah, strike. I mean, that's not humane to an umpire. No. Sorry.
I can get with a lot of the rules that they've changed. I think the speed of the game is a lot faster.
It's all about speed.
That whole ABS thing, I can't get with it. I like the human element of the umpire. There's going to be mistakes made. That's part of the human game. That's tough.
A pitch that I miss on a 1-1 count with nobody on at the bottom of the second with nobody, no outs. And that same pitch I miss with the winning run at third base and the bases loaded, in the 9th inning. don't get the same reaction. It's the same pitch I missed, but that ninth inning one, their heads explode, and that second inning one, a lot of times they don't even move. Yeah. So obviously pitches are situational, and a pitch that they really need, they really want, and it's a close pitch, and guys, a game is full of close pitches and plays. That's why we're out there.
That's what's great. That's why the game's great.
Sometimes they go your way, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the umpire is right, or most of the time, but sometimes he's wrong. But it's hilarious how you're saying the human element. People, they never remember the pitcher play that was a little questionable that went their way. They always remember the one that didn't.
Yeah.
So it's just the nature of the game. I have a hard time. I'm for the replay and that kind of stuff. I think it's better. I think the game's, but as far as pitches, man, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Dale, was there a pitcher that you would say was difficult to be a home plate umpire, that he had just insane movement on his pitches?
Well, yeah, there was a few. I mean, these guys are good.
Yeah.
And,
the average kid's throwing 90
Johnsons
now.
And Roger Clemens and I had guys that were really fine. See, I was in the American League, so I didn't have Maddox and stuff in that Atlanta Braves lineup, but Jamie Moyer, he threw like 12 miles an hour, but he could spot a baseball so well. And I remember one game I had this fireball pitcher for Minnesota. It was Juan Berenguer, big dude, and he threw like 95. I mean, he threw heat. And pitching for Texas was Charlie Huff, this knuckleball that could float in. So in the top of the inning, I would be going, shoot, and then in the bottom of the inning, we go.
That's gotta
be
tough.
How hard is it to call a knuckleballer? I mean, that's got to be impossible.
When I first came, because you don't see a lot of them in the minor leagues,
no.
Right? So when I came up in the big leagues, the first couple times out of knuckleball, I was because basically everything you've learned, you almost throw out the window with a knuckleball guy. And I remember a veteran guy told me one day, he said, listen, because I was calling a lot of balls, right? And he said, listen, with a knuckleball pitcher, they can't hit it, they can't catch it, and they don't know where it's at. So call strikes.
That's some advice.
And it's kind of true. And the most important thing about timing is extremely important. Maybe the most important thing an umpire or any official can do. Just don't call it too quick. Let the play happen. Let the pitch happen. But especially with a knuckleball guy, because that ball will just be like not even close. And I mean, it's just it was. But that was great advice. When I had a knuckleballer, it's like they're not going to look good. Okay, catchers are flying around trying to catch it. They're not going to look good, as far as just hitting their spot or whatever. So just call strikes.
Well, how difficult is it? Because like you talked about back in the day, like, I mean, I think the first guy to throw 100 miles an hour is Doc Gooden, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Now you see this now where these guys are all like 6'7", 6'8", and they're throwing the ball
average.
And you have a split second to make that call. Is it hard to pick the ball up to make those calls?
Well, it's all experience. And I mean, when you're going through the minor leagues, and if you make it to AAA, that's when the big league scouts are all now watching you and evaluating you. And if you're a prospect, now I think they've stopped doing it now, but when you're a prospect, they used to send 4 or 6 guys to Puerto Rico for winter ball, or Dominican Republic. I went to the Dominican for 2 years, and in the Dominican, they played a 60-game schedule, started in mid-October or so, and was done February 1st after the playoffs. But it would be in 60 games, the 4 American umpires would work 45 games behind the plate.
Wow.
Now, in a big league season with working a 4-man crew, I might work 35 or 30 something games. So 45 games in a 3-month period. That's a lot. Yeah. Every fourth game you had first base. Every fourth game you have 3 play games in a row at first base. One of the reasons they did that is they want you repetition. They want you to see pitches. They want you to see, because that's how you get your zone. That's how you focus and you learn to focus and concentrate and just see pitches. Now, as far as asking, is it hard to those guys that throw a zillion miles an hour? It is, but it isn't because I mean, if it's somebody you've never seen, also the first pitch, you go, whoa, this guy, oh my God. but because of the repetition, because of the mechanics and just, have been doing this so much that, it's not that much more. I mean, there's an argument to say it's more difficult to call a guy that throws much less miles an hour, but has a lot of movement. And because that's, these guys are so good. I mean, this Mariano Rivera is a great example. He, for a right-handed hitter, that pitch is inside the entire way until it gets to the plate.
God.
It's amazing. And hitters will go, and I mean, it was like it wasn't fair. But you have other guys like that. That's why you can't give up on a pitch. That's where you have to, because the movement is incredible on some of these guys. The other thing is, and most ballparks are pretty good now, but when I first came up, I saw a ton of new ballparks since when I came up in '86, but some of the backgrounds were horrible. The pitcher, the ball is coming out of, white shirts or whatever. Now, most ballparks have pretty good batter eyes. That you could, but tell you a little story. I was in 1995, I was working the divisional series. It was Seattle, Baltimore. The first two games were in Seattle, and then the 2 games in Baltimore. And then then go back to Seattle if they had to do that. Well, I had game 4 in Baltimore behind the plate. It was Randy Johnson pitching, and
wow,
Randy Johnson is 6'11", or something. He's you're on a 10-inch mound, okay. By his stride, everything. By the time he delivers the ball, it's like he's about 2 feet from you. And he threw, nasty move and miles per hour, whatever. The game, because it was playoffs and the TV, they rule the world. They tell you game times and everything. We had it was early October. We had a 3:00 start in Baltimore. Not a great time to start a game. The sun's much lower in the sky in October.
Nice shadow, probably.
The way the ballpark's set up. Anyway, when Seattle came up first, boom, they're gone. So now here comes Seattle on the mound, Johnson. So I always take some warm up pitches just to see where he's his release point and see the background. Very first warm up pitch he threw, Dan Wilson was the catcher, and it was coming out of a silver building in the back.
Oh my God!
He's so tall, right? And it's not a night game. If it's a night game, that would not be a factor, right? And frankly, it probably wouldn't have been much of a factor if it had been a 1:00 start or something. But the way, because of that late afternoon start, which they never start that time, except playoffs, right? Anyway, the very first warm-up pitch came out of the silver, with the sun on it, and both Wilson and I go, whoa, I mean, wow.
I'd be nervous.
So the first couple innings that Johnson was on the mound, you couldn't see the ball. I mean, it's tough to see the ball, and that's where, again, timing. You got to wait, because if you're too quick, you're gonna probably or a higher percentage of missing it because especially on something like that, it's tough to see. So there's a lot of factors in picking up a baseball, a pitch. But if you have your basics, your timing, your mechanics, all the checklists that we go through, you've got a decent shot of seeing it and doing the right thing.
Yeah. Now, you talk as many games as you've umpired, World Series, divisional games. You talked about the Blue Jays game with Jose Bautista's bat flip, which I would imagine would be one of the biggest crowd reactions that you probably have seen as an umpire. If you had to name probably the most exciting or biggest pop that you have umpired, what game would you say? Or
I said in my book, I've said, on podcasts, when he launched that hit. I mean, it was, sometimes a guy will hit the ball and you'll think, oh my God, that's gone. And then it isn't, or there's no way that's going out, and it does, or whatever. Well, we have an enclosed stadium with, I don't know what it is, 58,000, whatever it is, hockey fans who have been drinking for the last 2 days. And then that disastrous top of the 7th that they gave up the lead because of us, hitting the guy, and just that whole thing that happened. So if you remember, they had tied the game.
Yep.
And there was 2 runners on, and Batista came up, and there were 2 outs. So the game was already tied. So they got in that run back. But when he launched that hit, it was a no-brainer. That thing is so far. I think it hit Winnipeg. I think it went down, went out of the stadium and hit Winnipeg. But as I said before, that was probably the loudest, crowd reaction, and loudest. It was like a sonic boom. It was like a jet
probably
engine.
Insane.
It was
who was the
and I saw it as he launched it. I saw it go out, and in the side of my peripheral there, I see him flip the bat, and I went, "Oh boy, that's going to be interesting."
Who was the crew chief for that game?
I was the crew chief.
So in your mind, are you already thinking, oh my God, retaliation's coming? Because there's the unwritten rules in baseball. Don't show up a pitcher. Don't bat toss like that.
Especially back then. When
do you guys prepare for something for your next?
Well, yes, we have what we call red flags. And sometimes red flags are previous games that you weren't even there, from whatever. And then you have red flags during a game. If you see a guy, maybe
A-Rod game. A-Rod got drilled in Boston.
Right. So yeah, I was very aware of what he had just done. And plus, Batista was not the most liked guy.
He wasn't.
Maybe I'm
especially
talking
versus the Texans.
I'm not sure if his teammates liked it, frankly, but he was an intense player and obviously a very good player. But he was in a world on his, of his own when he was out on the field. So him doing that. Now I got to tell you, the next year, they didn't play again that year, obviously, because that was the last game 5.
Mm-hmm.
The next year we get our schedule, at our meeting before spring training.
You were at that game?
And they played twice. The Texas went to Toronto, like late April. And then Toronto came to Texas mid-May, and that was the last time they played all year. And we had the series in Texas.
Oh,
so I looked at the schedule and I said, boys, strap it on, because
you knew it was going to happen at home.
Is their chance to get back to this guy. I said, hopefully they'll get it all out of their system when they play in Canada, a few weeks before our series. Well, it was like church, Canada. And then we had a 3-game series in Arlington, and the first 2 games were like church, and we're just going, it's coming. It's coming. I will be shocked if it's not coming. They're just, you're running out of time, right? Because they're not going to play again. And sure as heck.
Were you on the field or were you behind the plate for the moment?
I was at first base. I was at first base.
Man, so you saw it go down.
But we already had we have a heads up program. We already had heads up, which not that we needed it, but we already had a heads up from the league that, hey, there could be problems, blah, 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 just be aware. And we talked about it before the series. And so I believe it was a 7th inning or 8th, right? Anyway, sure as heck, here comes Batista with nobody on. He's leading off the inning, right? And I'm going, well, this, they're waiting till the very last minute to do this, right? And sure as heck, boom, plucked, and he didn't throw it his head or anything, but they hit him, and, he slams the bat. And of course, Danny Isonia had the plate and immediately put out warnings, and he goes to first, and he's bitching and moaning and, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm thinking, actually, there might've been, no, there was 1 out, or 1 or 2. Anyway, I was thinking we might be able to escape any more problems because he's pissed, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking, as long as we don't have a double play ball, or as long as he doesn't try to go from first to third on a base hit, or somehow get around to score, and anytime he has a chance to take somebody out, because that's the only thing he can do now, right? Batista, for and trust me, he's going to do something. So sure as heck, what I hoped wouldn't happen happened. Double play ball to third base, and the throw to second. And now, as the first base umpire, I can't sit and watch second because I got to play it first, or I mean, I've got a very competent umpire at second to do that. But they throw to second. He starts to throw to first, and he's Odor for Texas, and he's taken out. Well, the ball was released, and it went, first base for me. I'm looking right here. It went behind me because he got mauled, and I started just instinctive. That's what you do. I started following the ball, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the entire Ranger dugout coming onto the field. So I thought maybe the ball's not that important right now. So And let you know, in my career, I've seen a lot of fights, baseball fights, which are mostly they do-si-do until somebody holds them back, and then he gets really pissed. But I have seen two extremely good, I mean, solid hits. One was in Milwaukee with Oakland. BJ Surhoff got blindsided. I mean, I think Rocky Rowe, another umpire, and I saw it, and I think he said that when he got hit, as he was going down, I think he said, "Mama," he's going down. But the other one, although I didn't see it on the field because the ball, but obviously I saw the video. But was that one? I mean, he
got him good.
Oh my God, he got him good. And I got to give it to Batista. He stayed up. He did. I mean,
unlike Tim Anderson last year,
ripped. Yeah.
But what do you guys do when there's a full-on brawl? I mean, you know who the instigators are, so you know who's going to be injected right there. But what do you guys do? You don't get involved to break it up. Do you just sit back with your card and just write down names of who's getting tossed?
Well, if you have let's say a hitter, yelling at the pitcher or something, starting to walk over, if you can get out in front of him and just direct him somewhere or whatever, that's great. Once they go, I'm not a math major, but 50 ball players and 4 umpires. I'm going to go with the take numbers and just observe. Baseball has not. I think it's stupid. Hockey has made changes. Basketball has made changes of leaving the bench or whatever. But in baseball, they all got to come out. Both bullpens have to come out. It's it's just. I think they could probably come up with something that would
heavy fines.
At least keep the bullpens out there.
Don't leave your position, certainly the bullpen doesn't need to come out. Okay. And why don't you just fight in the bullpen? Okay. Because you're right next to each other. Just go fight and leave us alone down here. But, anyway, so here they come. And we ended up, I think we ejected, we had
Donaldson had to go. I remember Donaldson came out like a mad cat. He went crazy.
Correct, and he is crazy. But and he has the papers to prove it. But we had 2 ejections before this even happened. Danny ran John Gibbons from the dugout on pitches, and I ran Toronto's first base coach Tim Kiefer or something because he was screaming at me for a balk.
God, you got a hell of a memory.
Well, and I said, it's not a bug. He goes, I see this every day. You just do your job. And he's like, you know what? I am going to do your job. Get the hell. He just pissed me off. But we already had 2 Toronto ejections before this even started. I think we got from the brawl. I believe we ran 4. It was 4 or 6. That'd be 8. I think we got 10 total because the next inning, now the acting manager, was Hale. I can't think of his first name. You said I have a good memory. Well, I just lost it. But Hale was the acting manager. He was the bench coach and acting manager, and like one of I think it was the first pitch hit a Texas Ranger. So the pitcher's gone. We already had warnings out. The pitcher's gone. Hale's gone. So I think we had 10 total. And so you're right. Yeah. When they come out, you just write down numbers and stuff because not all of us, I might see something that one of the other guys doesn't see. If you're a plate umpire, I suggest you keep your mask on. Just, you got it. Why not use it?
Smart.
But what was strange about that one is Gibbons, who had already been ejected a few innings earlier, he came back on the field. Well, that's a real no. I mean, so he got double suspended for that or whatever. And usually, not always, the managers and coaches, for the most part, aren't the ones, they're trying to keep things a little bit calmer. We had both managers going after each other. We had to separate the managers because they wanted to beat the crap out of each other. So it was quite a day.
Man, that's a game you don't forget.
Yeah. It was, if I looked up the ejection report, I believe it was 10.
Golly.
Oh my God. Now, you're a magnet for no-hitters. I mean, you saw Verlander's both of his. Now you weren't behind the plate for both of them. When you have a guy throwing a perfect game like that, does your strike zone ever change just to help them out just a little bit? Or either way, has it changed for a pitcher or has it changed for a batter that aggravated you that you just want to ring them up?
Well, I had one. I also had a combined no-hitter at third base in Seattle, but I had one behind the plate, 94. It was Milwaukee at Minnesota, Scott Erickson. And you're in a no-win situation. because if you ball a close pitch, you're squeezing him. He's close to a no hitter. You're screwing him. Blah blah blah. If you strike a close pitch, or now, or you're giving it to him. You're just giving it to him. We he's throwing well enough. Now you're just gonna shove. And so, as an umpire, you like that game with Erickson. I just said, you don't want to miss a strike.
Yeah.
You do not want to miss a strike. Umpires, your thought process is it's a strike until it isn't. And because that it's just a better game that way. And I'll tell you why. If you're real tight now, it's a little bit different now with the ABS and how we have gotten much better, with our zone. But if you have a guy that throwing a lot of close pitch and you're balling a ball, well, the infielders, everybody, they're bored, they're on their heels, nothing's happening. People don't really go to games to watch a bunch of guys walk, right? And so you and a lot of times umpires, and especially like amateur umpires at lower levels, their default on a close pitch is ball. I don't know why. It is. And your default should be strike.
Yeah.
If you have a borderline pitch, well, the definition of borderline is it could go either way. So if you have a borderline pitch, well, then if it can go either way, it's a strike.
That's right.
Now, I see the pitcher for 5-6 innings. I see the hitter maybe 3 times. So it's calling a strike. No, but it's just a better game, because what happens when strikes are being called and he's throwing strikes, now they start swinging, right? They got to swing the bat. If they swing it, they hit it. If they hit it, first of all, I don't have to call anything. Second of all, stuff's happening, right? Fielders and runners and stuff. And that's a much better game.
I love that. Dad, do you have
I could talk Dale's ear off. I mean, he's a baseball guy. What's the process? Like, how do you get selected for the World Series and the All-Star game? I mean, is there somebody constantly scoring you throughout the season, and then that's how they judge who goes to the World Series?
Yeah. In early September, they have a dartboard and they just throw. No, you are evaluated every pitch and every play, and frankly, every non-play. If you didn't call obstruction when you should have, or something, So there's in-person evaluations, there's video evaluations, and then there's of course the ABS system that they evaluate your strike zone. Plus, there's the intangible. It's hard to put how it's how you judge this, but how does a guy react when the S hits the fan? Does it affect him the next inning or the next half inning because he had a big, can you cuss on this?
Yeah.
You have a big shit house.
Yeah.
and now does that rattle the guy a little bit, or this team is just on you constantly? So now all of a sudden, are you maybe missing a pitch here or there that's going their way? Now, I mean, you don't get a lot of that in the big leagues. That's usually weeded out through the minor leagues, as you can see that. But that's an intangible, how you handle situations. It's easy to eject players and managers. All right. What's a challenge is to keep them in the game when they're not real happy with you.
Yeah.
And so there's tricks of that. So you have your your pitches and plays and those types of things, but you also have, how you handle situations. For example, when I was in the minor league, I was in AA in San Antonio, and I had the bases. There's only 2 umpires. It's just me and my plate partner. And the leadoff hitter for San Antonio, they had a double fence out the whole outfield. So if it hits the top fence, it's out of play. If it bounces, it hits it, it's 2. If it hits it on the fly, it's a home run. Of course, the bottom fence is all live. Well, I had fly ball. I had it hitting the top of the lower fence, and apparently I was the only one in Texas that had that.
Oh man!
So the guy ends up with a triple, but right when he slides in, Jesus Christ, and this is at a time that, I was in AA in 1983. Okay, so were you even born yet? I know you weren't.
I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
But this was not a time when you used to get together about stuff. It was a different mindset, and you lived and died with your call, and it's really stupid, but that's the way it was. And so, the manager who is the third base coach also, he's screaming and screaming, and he throws his hat, and I eject him, and it's a shit house. So, so now umpire luck, what we call umpire luck, is if I didn't have umpire luck, the next guy would get a base hit and he would score, right? But I had umpire luck. He got stranded at third. He was there with no outs and he never scored. So now that just makes it even worse, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my supervisor was there, and Dick Nelson, and he after the game, and I was, I knew then I missed the call, but obviously when I called it, I didn't, or I assumed I had called it right. But anyway, I said, Dick, what, I obviously it was pretty obvious that I was the only one that saw it that way. I said, should I have given the manager more leeway because I missed the call? I mean, should I have not? He goes, absolutely not. You got to remember, when there's an argument or a situation, you're dealing with team A. Well, team B is sitting there watching everything that's happening, right?
Yeah.
So if I am lenient about something because I think I missed a call and kind of let a guy get away with something he shouldn't do, what does that say to this team over here? Hey guys, all bets are off. We can, throw our hat, or we can, do whatever. I mean, you have to be cognizant that, an umpire has to be cognizant. You are umpiring. You're working two teams. Maybe only one's really pissed off at you right now, but you are working two teams. And so everything that's happening is being observed by them. But, you learn that, again, when you miss something, you deal with the best you can, but there's no makeup calls. There's no I'll give you a pitch because I missed that pitch. Because I already have team A pissed off at me. Now I give him a pitch. Well, guess what? Team B is now going to be pissed off at me. So now I got both teams. All right. I'd rather have just one, frankly.
And there's no tie goes to the runner.
No tie. Urban myth. So, and again, all this stuff, how do you handle situations, right? And how do you handle situations when you've screwed up, and it happens, right?
Yeah.
And I tell, when I speak to umpire groups, when I do clinics, I say, listen, yeah, you're pissed off at yourself that you missed that. And but you can't give the body language like, like on the field, like you're dejected or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to, and instead of hanging your head and being depressed, and after the game being moping around, let's make a negative into a positive. Why did I miss this call? Was it my positioning? Was it my timing? Could I have gotten a better angle? I mean, there's a checklist of things we have. If it's a pitch, you go, was my head height good? Was I moving on the pitch? But there's all this checklist stuff.
Yeah.
And try to figure out. And every once in a while, you did everything right. You just missed it. And that's probably focus, right? But you try to learn from it and then let it go and move on, because you're going to have other games, other plays. And it's like a shortstop. He misses that double play ball. Well, there's another one coming. So you
gotta get ready.
You got to get ready. Yeah.
They always say short-term memory. You're giving all this good advice. Now, if there's someone that listening to this podcast right now and they're thinking about getting into umpire, whether it's high school, D1, college, pros, what is some advice that you have been given that you would pour into someone else?
Well, first of all, we need officials, but not just baseball. Around the country, in practically every sport, we're short on officials, and it affects the kids, right? I mean, you have calls postponed or canceled because they don't have umpires or referees. So I certainly encourage people that if you've thought about it, or to look into it and see if it's something that you like to do, because they certainly could use the man and women power. And plus, let's be honest, a lot of those people in the stands are great umpires during the game. So maybe they should try it, when they strap it on and go out there and try it themselves. But, some of the advice, one of the best pieces of advice I was given by Marty Springstead, who was the American League supervisor when I was hired, and he had worked 20 years in the American League and just a super ambassador for the game and a great guy and really good with umpires and people, a very good people manager. But he told, I was struggling bad in my second year, my sophomore year in 87. So much so that in late July, when I was in New York on an off day, Marty asked me to come to the office, and he said, how do you think you're doing, Scotty? And I said, I think and I knew I was struggling, but I'm not going to tell him that. Right. so I said, well, I haven't had an all-star year, but I think I'm doing okay. He goes, no, you're not. He goes, the supervisors, the feedback, he goes, we got to change some things. He goes, and if we can't get some changes, we're going to have to let you go. Well, that's devastating to a young umpire. You got to understand that I was 27 years old. And my second year, and it was one of those things where the more I tried to right the ship, so to speak, the farther I fell down the hill. I mean, so anyway, Marty wasn't just going to say that and have me go. He said, and we're gonna work on this together, and we're gonna get this done. And so he did. But he told me, and it was great advice, and I would tell this to be, don't get too high when things are going great, and don't get too low. It's a long season. It's a marathon. You want to stay. If I went out and I just balls, man, I didn't miss a pitch. It was a tough game, and that's great. You had a good game. Move on. Right.
Yeah. Because
that very next game, you could have the biggest shit house in the world and run 5 guys. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, you can't just think, oh, everything's there. But when it's, and he said, but it's never as low as you think. Yes, maybe you had a tough game. Yes, maybe you could have done this or this. Learn from them, move on. Keep that. Don't be the roller coaster during the season. Keep that steady, middle ground. And for people that are first starting out, yes, you're going to make mistakes. Yes, there's going to be situations that you just, you're like a deer in headlights. Like, God Almighty. And yes, you're going to just try to block out the noise. These idiots. I'm not talking about that's a good pitch or whatever. I'm talking about these people that are just
riding you.
In youth baseball, especially the younger kids, they're learning the game. Well, guess what? So are the umpires. I mean, you're not going to get D1 officials for a 5th grader,
knee high and all this other stuff. Little Johnny isn't even sure where the cutoff man is, but you're going to be all over this umpire because he, I mean, come on, that's part of the reason why we're short on officials, because you get guys that, especially younger kids, teenagers, 20s, but whomever, they really kind of like it. They kind of enjoy umpiring, but they can't take it. They quit because these people are just insane. So just try to block out the noise and just, there are times, I know I'm rambling here, but there are times when I walked off the field and players said, "Hey, good job," or whatever. And I know I didn't have a good job. I know that I could have done this or that better. Right. I mean, you got to be honest with yourself, but there are other times that the dugouts were on fire and heads are exploding. And I walk off and I looked in the mirror and I said, you know what? That was a tough game. And you handled it. Yeah. Because it's not easy. So just because you're complimented doesn't mean you're good. And just because things were just a cluster doesn't necessarily mean you were bad. So be honest with yourself and it'll all work out if you enjoy the job.
I love that. But did it ever get intimidating, Dale? I mean, like, I know you had your regular games, but being in the World Series, like doing your first game behind the plate for the World Series with, the amount of pressure that's on these teams in the World Series and millions of people watching it. Was it nervous doing it your first game behind the plate?
Absolutely. I mean, my first playoff game, you're nervous, but a lot of times the build up to the game is much worse than the game. Once the game starts, you're doing what you've been doing. Yep. They got to pitch and they got to hit and they got to field and they got to throw. I mean, they got to run. It's baseball. It's what you've been doing for years. It's what you've been doing for a zillion innings. So once you get started, usually that's your comfort zone. It's the build up to it.
It's always the build up.
And so I tried to as best I can. And there's no doubt. Once I had my first one, my second and third one, you're still nervous. You're still, but you're directing that butterflies a little bit, the nervousness to remaining focused and doing what you got to do. You can be prepared and everything, and you can everything. But if you get that goofy play like Batista or the Russell Martin play or whatever, you can't plan for that. So again, like I said earlier, the challenge is to deal with whatever happens on the field that day. And sometimes what happens is a shithouse and you end up running 3 or 4 guys. And it may not even be, I want to say your fault, but it may be because it was a screwed up play But and players and managers hate stuff that they're not used to, obstruction, interference. They go goofy because they don't know the rule usually, and you don't see it that often, right? And then all of a sudden you make it, hey, that's obstruction. He gets there. What? I mean, they because they don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And so you just have to. Sound like George Bush Sr., but you have to stay the course, and you have to, just focus and concentrate and take it every pitch, every play, and do your job.
Oh no,
I have more. I mean, Dale, you should have,
I don't want to take up all his time.
You should have a podcast yourself, Dale. I mean, with all the history you have and all the guests you could probably get on your podcast. Now, one of your most memorable games was the 9/11 game when George Bush was there. And I just heard recently on one of the podcasts when I was listening about you, the amount of security that was there. I mean, the Secret Service that was dressed of his umpires and
right.
ground crews members. How was that?
Wild, intense. And I had the plate for that game. The country was in shock from 9/11. Obviously, New York was in shock. And it was a very tough time for everybody because you just really didn't know what was happening, right? I mean, you had anthrax in the mail. You had, there was
it's crazy.
Just a lot of stuff going on. Although I figured that of all the places in the world, this is the most secure place tonight was the Yankee Stadium because of obvious reasons. But yeah, it was insane, the amount of security. Yankee Stadium has great security. Major League Baseball, for the most part, everywhere does. But Yankee Stadium is one of the best. And but that night, quick example, a normal game at Yankee Stadium. This is the old stadium. We went through the press gate. There was a guy there that had been there since Babe Ruth, I think, and so he knew, he knows everybody. We didn't have to give him credentials or anything because he knows, right? And hey, boom, and you go down, and you go down these stairs, and there's somebody sitting at the bottom of the stairs, and you go down this long hallway and another long hallway. Then you take a right, and that's the Yankee clubhouse, and there's a couple of security there. And then you go another, 50 yards, 30 yards, and there's our locker room, and there's supposed to be somebody sitting outside ours. A lot of times there wasn't, because that's how we rate. But that was, that was a normal night. On this night, obviously, you had to go through the metal detectors. You had to have your credentials. The guy knows you, but if you don't have your credentials, you're not getting in. You went down the stairs. There was, security there. That long hallway, there was security every 15 feet.
Wow.
And there's no doors. I mean, it's just a long hallway. and then there's this hallway, and every 15 feet, you go around the corner in the Yankee clubhouse. There was a ton of security, right? Then you go to our room, and there was a couple guys there. I mean, it was like, whoa. And Jimmy Joyce and I were the first two guys to arrive at the stadium. We walk in, and here's this gentleman sitting there that we have no idea who he is. And he introduced himself. He's Secret Service. He goes, I'm going to be going out on the field with you guys in an umpire uniform. And one of our 6 umpires, it was Mark Hirschbeck, is going to stay in the tunnel, so we don't have 7 umpires out, for the national anthem and the first pitch and all that stuff. And we said, okay, cool. Well, he had an earpiece, and so, but we saw what he had underneath the umpire, windbreaker, bulletproof vest. He had a, I don't know, it was a submachine gun, but it looked really intimidating. He had handcuffs. He had zip ties. He had some kind of spray that's, I don't know. I doubt if it was, for fragrance, but
at least you were safe.
Yeah. And he had a taser. And, as I'm getting dressed, and, I said, can I use that taser during the game? You don't mind if I have that in my ball bag just in case I needed it, But he laughed and then had me arrested. No, but but it was, and he had this earpiece, and he was saying that the president is leaving the White House. I said, oh, cool. The president's on Air Force One. Fantastic. He was giving us upgrades. Right? So we had no idea if he's going to come by our room or not. A lot of times, I would say most of the time they do, but not always. And we had to walk 8:20 or something. It was like a 8:35 start or whatever. And at about 7:30-ish, he goes, the president will be here at 7:58. Okay. That's pretty precise. And sure as heck, he came in. Now we had the Secret Service guy that was, with us. The old Yankee Stadium clubhouse, you walked in the main door. It was a rectangular room with the lockers on each side. And then opposite to where you came in, there was a doorway with no door, but just a doorway. And you go in and you take a right. There's the showers. You take a left, or the toilets and sink and everything. I happened to just go do my business, and all of a sudden I heard this racket behind me. Like, obviously they'd arrived, right? And now we had the one guy, but now the president's there, so they've got a bunch of guys, right? that are there.
Yeah.
And as per, I guess, their protocol or whatever, when they come in, even though the one guy was already one of the guys and his, protecting him, he just immediately walked to the other doorway to see what is this in this other doorway? Is there anybody back here? What is this area? Well, I've got my back to him because I'm standing at a urinal doing what you do at urinals. and he goes, you've got a visitor. And I look back and I go, I'll just be, I'll right with you. And so, I washed my hands, and I made sure that, as I came out with a towel, that I did wash my hands. So he had already come by, and, everybody introduced themselves and this and that. And now I walk out. Now, you got to remember, George W. Bush was, I knew him before he was governor I'd met him because he was the Rangers owner.
Rangers, yep.
And he used to always sit right behind the screen, right at the end of the Rangers dugout. And the ball boy would be on this side of the screen, So sometimes when the inning would end, the ball boy is helping the bat boy do something, and I need a couple of balls. So I would just walk over and just get the balls myself. Well, we're in Texas and it's July, right? I walked over when Bush was, this was when he was governor, but he was sitting there, and I walked over and he goes, wow, looks like you're sweating. And
130
degrees.
Yeah,
it's, Texas in July, but I mean, he a good guy. I mean, he was always joking. So anyway, I walk out from after he's, said hello to everybody. And I always keep it in my trunk, an Oregon Ducks hat. And I walk out with this Ducks hat, and I go, Mr. President, Dale Scott. And he goes, yeah, I remember you, Dale. You're the one's always sweating. And I said, yes. And he looks up, he goes, I didn't know, are you from Oregon? I go, yes, I'm from Eugene. I live in Portland. He goes, wow, Portland. He goes, I don't know much about Portland. All I know is that anytime my dad or I went there, they rioted. And
guys.
And I said,
jeez.
Yeah, that's Portland. So, but he said, how are the Ducks doing it? Well, it just so happened that the game right before I went to the World Series, their home winning streak, and they hadn't lost in a long time. Anyway, they lost at home to Stanford. So I said, well, they were doing well, but they gave one up to Stanford. He said, don't worry, the Ducks are going to be fine this year. Well, the Ducks ended up number 2 that year. So
oh, man,
I said, do you have any Powerball numbers?
Yeah.
But he very personal guy. But he stayed there. He signed 24 baseballs for us.
Wow.
And stuff. Well, now it's time for us to walk. And a lot of times a president or high dignitary will stay in be in an umpire's room before they go on the field, because our room is much smaller than a clubhouse. It's very secure for obvious reasons. And it usually has a direct line right to the field. And so, we go out on the field, and of course you have a groundskeeper that's a Secret Service guy. You have this umpire. You have, plain clothes guys. I mean, it's big time stuff. And he's got this Yankee jacket, or maybe it was a presidential. It might have been the president jacket, but underneath it he had a flap jacket or whatever. And I know the story where he warmed up with Jeter, and you better throw a strike. They'll boo the hell out of you.
Yep.
But anyway, it was unbelievable, the security. And with all this going on, I still have to work the plate for Game 3 of the World Series. I'm kind of trying to focus and stuff, but you're so used to having a routine, and it's totally busted, there. But it worked out. It was Clemens against for Arizona was I forget his name, lefty. He threw a good game, Anderson, I think. But they won the game. The Yankees did. But anyway, it was insane. Yes.
Wow. All those years umpiring, Dale, was there ever a player that you would say as an umpire was your favorite player to umpire?
Favorite?
Yeah.
Well, there were some good guys. Yeah. Harold Reynolds. It helped that his brother played at Oregon and back in the 70s. And also he was from Corvallis, Oregon. So, we had a lot to talk about. Most players are there to do a job. And they'll say hi or whatever, but they're focused and do whatever. Then you have a few on one end of the spectrum that always want to talk or are very personable, and you have a few on the other end of the spectrum that hate your guts.
Yeah.
And so it's just not very, very pleasant. And part of that is just they're competing. Their mind is somewhere else. But I wasn't a big talker. Like when I worked the plate, some catchers like to talk more than others. I was not a big talker.
Yeah.
But some guys, they're talking all the time. It's like, dude, I'm trying to please, after the game, we'll go for a beer or something. I mean, just let me work here. But so for the vast majority of guys are just in that middle spectrum where they're just doing their job and whatever. But you do have the two ends.
Yeah.
Now, Dale, you wrote a book. You wrote a book called The Umpire's Out. You openly came out in 2014 about being gay. Was that the hardest decision in your life? Because nowadays it's normal, but back then, were you afraid of being judged and being fired?
Well, I don't know if you read the book, but I mean, I actively,
I want to though.
I actively try to hide my true self for all through the minor leagues, all through the big leagues up till the late 90s. I'll just quickly tell you a story. I started baseball in 1981 in the Northwest League. That's the year I went to umpire school. I was assigned to the Northwest League. My first game in the Northwest League was about a week or 10 days after the first reported mysterious cancers were affecting healthy young men in New York and San Francisco. Now, that turned out to be the AIDS epidemic, but at the time they didn't know what it was, right? But when that whole story broke, not only was I not wanting baseball to know that I was gay because I would never get promoted, in my mind for sure, and there would be guys who wouldn't want to necessarily work with me. Now with AIDS, and just quick recap, they didn't know how it was spread for a while. They thought towels or doorknobs or whatever. And like I said earlier, you're with your partner in the leagues 24/7 basically. So there would definitely be people that would not be afraid to work with me. So I actively hid my true identity in the late 90s. Frankly, the secret was out within the staff. Everybody freaking. I mean, nobody really said anything, but when you have the same roommate for 15 years, and you go in the off season, we went to Australia. Yeah, that's a roommate. I mean, seriously. Right? So I had actually it was early. I have two stories. In the late 90s, it was in spring training. There was a little umpire bar we used to go to in Tempe, and just out of nowhere, Darryl Cousins, another rec league umpire. There's a lot of minor league guys there, and we're kind of sitting over on the side. And out of nowhere, Darryl goes, Scotty, I know you have a little bit different lifestyle. I just want to let you know I don't care, and I walk on the field with you any day.
That's awesome.
And of course, my deflector shields went up because I immediately and so I was. I mean, it came out of nowhere, but all I said was, well, "Thanks, Darryl. I appreciate that." And I didn't talk. About a week later, Rick Reed, kind of the same thing, and so I'm thinking in my mind, I guess the jig is up. They must know. How did they guess? But I still was, for years, I was happy that they had said decision. That, but I was uncomfortable. It was so not what I'd been used to. Then when I was named crew chief, my first crew after opening day in San Francisco, we went to Morton's for dinner. We had a day game, so we went to Morton's. We got the wine ordered and stuff, and it was Ron Culpa, Jimmy Joyce, and Jeff Nelson, and Culpa, who I call him, no filter Culpa because he doesn't have one. He goes, "Hey, Chief," he goes, let's wipe that elephant out of the room. We know you're gay. We don't care. I want to bust balls all year. So let's go, So Jimmy Joyce grabs the wine bottle and takes, starts drinking it. Yeah. I mean, and
that's awesome.
And Jeff Nelson did a spit take and I said, but that opened up. It was, and he was right. I'm glad he did it because then, now we don't have to tiptoe around about BS or whatever.
Yeah.
So the staff knew, and MLB knew, but it was never officially talked about or discussed, with management or whatever. But in 2013, Mike and I, who we'd been together since 1986, but we legally got married when we could do that. And the next year, I had this interview with Referee Magazine. They were doing a story about my career and stuff. And throughout it, I talk about all that kind of stuff. But everyone's mentioned people from high school, when I worked radio, my program director. I mean, all these people. And it was a great story. Well written, but I thought, I didn't mention Mike once. And he's been with me this whole journey. And I thought, and they wanted some pictures, the personal pictures to go with. And one of them was Mike and I, when we were on a plane going to Australia the year before when they opened up in Australia. And I wrote the caption, Dale Scott with longtime companion Michael Roush. And the editor called me, a friend of mine, he said, I have no problem running that. Are you sure you want to do that? Because you're opening up, Pandora's box here. And I said, yes, I am, So the story comes out and crickets. Because Referee Magazine is not sold on newsstands, and it is only about a 38,000 pub. It's a periodical. It's not obviously a major, and it just didn't make the media basically. But there was one guy that got it who was a gay Division I football official. I don't know who it was, but he contacted Outsports.com and said, "Hey, Dale Scott just came out in Referee Magazine with this picture." And Outsports contacted me. They wanted an interview. It was right when the playoffs were going to start. I said, listen, I'll talk to you after the World Series, which I did. That he told me it's going to drop. We're going to put it online on December 2nd. I said, great. Didn't think much more about it because, Referee Magazine doing anything, Outsports, nobody reads that, right? So I wake up at about 9 o'clock that morning. I pick up my phone. It had exploded. Text messages, emails, missed calls. They had dropped this about 45 minutes earlier, and it was everywhere. It was on ESPN. It was on CNN. Yeah. It was on. I was getting calls for interviews from everywhere. It was a whirlwind. Mike, who had nothing to do with this except just being with me, but he was getting calls from people from high school that he hadn't talked to in years, like, Roush, what did you tell me?
So, could you imagine though if that would have been 1996 when that happened?
Well, that's true, and that's just it. Some people say, "Well, do you wish you had done this earlier?" Well, in a hypothetical world, yeah, but in a real world, no. I either I wasn't ready, or frankly, the world wasn't ready. Society wasn't ready. But the world
I'm glad
can
be an ugly place.
What's that?
The world can be a real ugly place.
Ooh. Especially with social media and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So easy to hide by the keyboard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say, now you had comments of the story where you can hide because there's no names, right? Well, and you heard the stupid stuff like, oh well, no wonder he likes to call balls more than strikes, or when I walked on the field, and by the way, this was December, so games weren't until, spring training wasn't until March. But I remember I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect from fans yelling something stupid, or a player maybe, saying something, whatever. But this one guy yelled between innings, because in the story I said I was an Oregon Duck fan. And between innings, he goes, I cannot believe that Dale Scott came out as a Duck fan. And there's a pause, and of course I'm not looking at him, I'm going, okay, this has got to be good. But it makes a lot of sense with all the uniform changes.
Oh my god.
Now that's clever. That was funny.
That one is that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, I definitely have to get your book. It looks like a good read.
It's got a lot of stories. It's got my personal journey. There's also an audiobook that I narrated. My years in radio helped me with that. And I've had unbelievably positive feedback.
We'll have to get them autographed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll sign up. UmpireDaleScott.com is my website. It in there, it says, if you have a book, where to send it for me to sign.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I'll do that.
And so now it's hard to sign audiobooks, I'll be honest with you, but but yeah, it's gotten great reviews. the reviews are better than what it's sold, but maybe maybe it'll be. But I got to tell you, when I went on a book tour, there were people that came up to me in tears saying, you don't understand how important it was when you came out. I mean, I felt I didn't, I felt out of place. One guy was in Toronto who I was doing a book signing up there. He's like 28. He was a decent baseball player in high school. He started playing in college, but he said, I didn't feel like I fit in. They were saying gay jokes in the locker rooms or whatever. And it hurt him, and he stopped playing baseball. And he goes, and then when you came out and I heard that, he was tearing up because I can't tell you how important that was for me to say, God, if he can do this on that stage,
that's the hardest decision anyone has to make, because you don't know the outcome of it. And you had a job that was an amazing job, and people could have turned on it. I think you said, was it Marlon Byrd that came up and gave you a big hug?
Yeah.
And that had to be a big weight off your shoulders, knowing that
unbelievable
players coming up and hugging you.
Right. And frankly, only that whole season, only 3 players, 1 coach and 1 trainer said anything, all positive. 2 of the players was that day, the first day of spring training. So, but that certainly helped. But the thing is that I didn't realize, maybe I was naive or stupid, but I just didn't realize how my story could affect so many people in a positive way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And how they felt. A lesbian couple in San Francisco, again, she was crying. She goes, you opened my mind, opened the door to saying, my goodness, kind of the same thing. You're on that stage and that takes guts. And by God, if he can do that, I can do this,
Yeah. You think there's people that commit suicide because they get the wrong response from people. It causes them to be ashamed and go do things that they shouldn't. That's, the world is a horrible place at times. Yeah. And you are an inspiration to people.
Well, that trainer, who I won't name, but he's gay, and he was in the closet, and he was married to a man, but he said, I just, congratulations, thank you. He goes, you're opening that door in baseball, and hopefully we can all walk through that soon, and it's just a non-issue. I said that in interviews at the time. I said, listen, I'm hoping at some point this isn't even an issue. I mean, it's not even a thing, and we're getting there, I think. Yeah. But we, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah. But it's been unbelievably positive feedback.
That's good. That's a beautiful story, Dale. And we thank you for sharing it. We also thank you for coming on this podcast.
Absolutely. Tonight. Tyler's a newlywed, so he's giving me the look like you got to get going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on. Priorities, dude.
No, he's 2 hours behind me. I'm on the East Coast.
I'm in Colorado.
So he's chilling.
Okay, all right.
But Dale, we definitely want to have you on again. We do have a third guy on this podcast, and I have a plethora of more questions I could ask you, from negotiating contracts to what you think of the new rules. What do you think of player contracts nowadays? So we definitely would love to have you back on again,
especially during the season.
Well, you know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Dale, you enjoy your night. Again, thank you for coming on, and we'll reach out to you next time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I had a good time. Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it, Dale.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye. Man, Ace missed out on a good one.
That was a good one. I love having guests on. It's been a while since we had a guest on, and it's always very good insight. Very good insight. Like the whole strike zone changing. Like, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. And then there's other things too. Like, I didn't realize too, like, they have guys that take care of all their luggage and stuff and do their wash for them and prepare them for their road trips. Like, they have a guy in the clubhouse that does that for them.
A lot of traveling for them.
That's another thing. Like, I wanted to ask him, and we'll get into that next time we talk to him, is how do they pick who you're going to be with for the whole season? Do you get time off? So there's a whole bunch of more questions that we could ask him.
Well, we hope that y'all enjoyed this wonderful conversation with Dale Scott. Huge, just thanks again for giving us the insight into umpire's view of eye. Continue to show the sport. We've been killing on YouTube lately and Spotify, and we love you guys.
And check out his book, The Umpire's Out. It's a must-read. It's a really good book, so I'm going to be getting it. And get it autographed.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.